Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay. I'm the CEO of the Yarbrough Group, and I'm here with.
Elaine Yarbrough, the founder of the Yarbrough Group, and we're excited to be doing another vlog with our really good friend and associate.
Thank you. I'm Cherie Buckner-Webb. Glad to be with you.
We're so glad you could join us. This week's vlog is a little bit different. We are pulling from current events a little bit more beyond COVID and talking about race dynamics in the United States. There have been large amounts of protests over the last few weeks in DC here. One of them actually even ended on my street, on Swan Street in downtown DC. So it's very, very close to home, literally, very close to our hearts, very close to the work we've been doing for the last, for me, 15 years, and I know for my colleagues longer. And so we decided that that would be part of the focus, or the focus of today's discussion. We've also all known each other for a really long time, so we get to have the similar feel of our previous vlogs, since it's a casual conversation about very important topics between people who really care about each other. So, Dr. Yarbrough, I believe you were gonna kick us off.
Yeah, so we have been thinking, like many people, this is a kind of a perfect storm of where all the events together actually could push for large scale change. That's not guaranteed, but out of 50 years of social justice work, kind of been looking for those things and supporting and pushing. And what we really want to focus on today is what we role model is, how do you build relationships? How do you stay open? How do you learn? What's the communication like? And we're going to look at it from various viewpoints. One viewpoint is,
Oh, well,
there.
I'm gonna pause us. Hi, everyone. We're back. Had a little bit of a tech issue as usual. Life keeps happening, even though we try to make it bend to our will. So off we go. Dr. Yarbrough.
Okay, as I'm saying, so we've been thinking about this various ways in terms of people saying, I want to learn, what can I do, and so forth. And the first thing we would suggest, and we all weigh in on this, if you just stop for a moment and think about what you want to have occur. Sometimes this reaction, and it's legitimate, it's normal, it's just not very helpful. People react out of fear, shame and guilt. That's at the way low end of the energy scale. And so what is your vision of what you'd like to have happen? Do you really want to see an equitable community?
So,
And
sorry to pause you. When you're saying you, I think we didn't really talk about like which group of people we're kind of talking about. And so are you kind of talking about people who are like maybe white people who are new to thinking about things through a racial lens? Is that, or who are you kind of talking about?
For me, that fit with all of us,
Yeah.
what she has said so far.
Okay.
And also, yeah, it fits with all of us, but that's the words people have been using.
Got it. Thanks. Sorry, I was lost a little, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
Sorry, I was taking notes.
Are we recording?
Yeah.
Oh, didn't know we were recording.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so even whether it's your life, whether it's the community we're talking about now in terms of race relations, it could be gender relations, anything. What do you want to have happen? Have you ever experienced that? And so part of the work might be talking with people about what might be, so that you come from a place of, I want to support that, as opposed to, I'm afraid I'll look bad, or I should be doing this, because we know that doesn't last long. So first of all, it's the vision. And I'll stop there and ask for any expansion of that and see if y'all agree with that one.
I think that's really important, because I think particularly when there's a chaotic period and we've had that fear and trembling behind us, mostly we want it to stop.
Yeah.
we haven't looked deeper than that. So I really appreciate what you're saying about what do you want and what's causing it, and what would the outcomes be if we could choose. Then we could actually work toward them and not just be raising Cain in the street and having lots and lots of social contact that shouldn't be happening right now.
Yeah, well, there is that. Yeah.
Yeah. And what that kind of calls to mind for me is one of the things that, Mom, you've mentioned often about parenting, which is that if you're trying to do it not the way your parents did, it doesn't help you not do it, because instead you have to know what you want to do. And one of my favorite examples that you always give is that, like, you were like, I will not say to Lindsay, be a lady, because that was always pulled out, especially in the South, when little girls are like getting dirty or getting into something or talking back or asking questions they shouldn't. You're like, I will not say be a lady. And then you're down at Nanny's house. I was 2. I started getting into something and you said it and then went, and then there's all this, like you were saying, like shame and guilt and question marks around, oh God, what have I done? But if you don't have the phrase that's like, go on, get into that, which you also don't want to say. So it's like, so that question of, by having that vision and what might be, you know, what to go for. And so instead of it being, well, I don't want that, it's, I do want this. And I thought that tied in a really interesting parallel to things that you often mention with parenting.
Which reminds me that of the psychological phrase, which is totally true. Whatever you fear, you'll attract to yourself. So
Amen.
if you fear a black man in a hoodie, you're going to have the Million Man March coming at your hoodies. And so the fear is not useful, and yet you can't be afraid of the fear, because now we're double down. So talk to anybody you can about creating that vision. And so I'm gonna tip another thing and then turn it over to y'all. So I've been thinking about several categories, and part of it is how you're raised. Like you say, if I don't know the positive to the alternative to be a lady, nothing happens. You know, you type in the software and nothing happens on the screen. And so what have you learned? And so being aware of what you learned growing up, and then how you could learn more different expansion. So I'm thinking a lot about history today. In the South, we had this phrase of we love the individuals, hate the race. But in the North, it was love the race, don't know any individuals. And so we had two sides of that. But growing up, since our family was so generous, I mean, we just had people all in, and we had a little tiny house, and we just had people lined up on pallets. You know, there was all kinds of colors and so forth. And so as a little kid, I took that feeling in around, this is okay, because that was what was happening. Anyway, so I'll stop there because I started into my family story.
I like very much hearing that, because we talk about stereotypes and that's what comes up. What is a black person? What is a black person from the West living in Boise? Whenever I say I'm from Boise, Idaho, they go, oh, poor, she's probably adopted by black folks or got abandoned, or you know, she used to do something she had no business and got stuck and couldn't get out of Idaho. You know, so we get to know a person, but we have a story that we create. And particularly when we group people. Have wonderful, and I love that I know black people, but I don't know a black person intimately. Or I know white girls, but I don't know a white woman. Well, that's helpful.
Yeah, and to me, what that ties together is the whole dynamic that we talk about in forming any community, any group, any team, which is the individual and group. And how do we kind of weave them together and really acknowledge the different experiences that individuals have that make our group and community stronger, because we're made up of the individuals, but then the subgroups within communities don't always have spaces to connect. And that dynamic of, well, then just differences don't matter because we're all people, but the differences really do matter, because it's a difference of experience, now we're talking about how people are treated by police, you know, like those differences matter, and that's why we're coming together. So
and I want to go back to the metaphor again that you talked about, be a lady. So
Mhm.
be a lady in your context might have been absolutely a different lady in my context.
Yes.
And it's really interesting. What does it mean to be a lady? And it may be what my job is as a lady, when especially I think historically about Black women, what it meant to be a lady. If you had this really good hat and a pair of gloves and a something to go over your, there are certain things like that. You were a lady when you went to church. You didn't hear that word used in the context of you working in the fields, or you working in the big house, or you scrubbing somebody's floor. But she still maintained that ladyship, but it was only contextual on a certain day in a certain environment. And I think the same happens to white women.
Oh yeah.
When they're a lady.
Yeah. Well, it's the Victorian lady, the cinched up proper, you can never speak back. And it was across all contexts.
Y'all had to be skinny. We didn't have to do that.
I know, which I so
Oh, y'all so skinny.
Oh God, I know. No permission.
Yeah, we had some back.
Yeah, yeah. Well, back have another thought based on the history piece. Growing up in Waco, Texas, so I watched, my nephew, and so I started thinking, so how do people learn who haven't been in the community of differences? And he got involved in helping the people in Haiti. He's good with his hands. He built wells and so forth. And of course, he got to know people, and he loved these people. And he took this course that was being offered through Baylor University, and it was a weekend simulation on poverty. It's brilliant, the design. I was quite stunned. But they went in on a Friday night, and they didn't know what was going to happen. And the facilitator said, okay, you can pick 2 things that you have with you for the whole weekend. And like, you could take a toothbrush, but not toothpaste, unless that was your 2 thing, And so then they had to exist for a weekend. And of course, most of them looked like homeless people. And that went so deep in him. And I thought, well, it really is better to learn experientially. And he
Yeah.
was in a people of color context, but he stepped into that, and I thought, yeah. So, reading is important. We've all talked about that in social media, but to have that experience, so you might look for that in your communities. And then,
and one last piece about your earlier comment, to be a boy, I have men children, good boy, and boys on the basketball, football field, golf course. What a boy, good boy. But let me tell you, when I hear boy, a Black man referred to as boy over the age of 15 or 16, it has a whole different context. So even though you're doing it right with one, you're doing it wrong with another. And how do we learn those lessons? I think that's very important for us to learn contextually what that means.
Talk about what that means in the Black community.
Well, historically, Black males never got to be treated like men, never got the respect of being an adult, fully functional, thinking, caring for his family. He was always less than. So it was boy, do this, boy, do that. And I treated you like the boy, like you didn't have good sense, like you didn't have the ability to care for others, all those things. So boy is a pejorative in my context. Sure. With a grown man.
Yeah. And that's the kind of learning we're talking about. It's neither right nor wrong, up nor down. That's that context.
Oh, it's wrong.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean,
I'm saving their lives now.
I know. What I mean is,
I get you.
And so learn that, and instead of trying to talk somebody out of it,
yes,
that's the context. Because women are always we're trying to talk women out of their thoughts. We're trying to talk Black people out of their thoughts. Just realize that's a context. So,
and to build on the previous kind of social movement that was one of the biggest ones in the US with the Me Too movement, like the context of what it is to be a woman is to be sexually harassed. Mm-hmm. And that I think a lot of women didn't realize, one, either how pervasive it is, it's like, oh, that just happened to me. Right. Or it was that like guys will be guys, and so of course it'll happen because I'm out and about. And I think that I think it's fascinating how this round of Black Lives Matter, because it's really a second round of with that title, but at least in the broader context in the US, and that it's in some ways it's mirroring that same pattern of the dominant group won't see how pervasive it is, in part because the people who are in it don't have space to talk about it in a way that the dominant group hears it. And so like women,
and not only space, but aren't empowered
yes,
to talk about it.
yes,
Yeah.
and aren't believed when they do talk about it.
That's part of the empowerment thing. Oh, she didn't know what she's talking about. You know?
Yeah.
She does.
So
I'm sorry.
and that's been one of the differences, it seems, in DC this time, is there are white people out with Black Lives Matter signs. Like it's much bigger and more reflected by the dominant culture in a way that it feels really different, which gives me a little bit of hope for lasting change, especially as companies or individuals or communities can talk about the dynamics of privilege in a new way and with some pressure to do so in order to instigate change.
Yeah. Well, overall, numbers always eventually out trump power.
Right.
So if enough numbers come together, it's true forever, the shift happens. But I want to go back and echo one thing you said, then I want to hear Cherie talk about this too. To tell your truth and have it not be believed and or framed is so diminishing. So people of color or women, whoever's the marginalized group, talk about whether it's sexual harassment or whatever, and it's either like it doesn't happen, it only happens to you because you must be weird, or number two, you brought it on yourself. So it's both disbelieved and reframed, so it goes away. And so
for them. Yes.
for them. So would you talk about that from a African American perspective?
Well, I think that's one of the things that's happened for at least my lifetime and probably way before me. It can't be true because mainstream dominant culture says it's not true. And I think part of it is the power. You have no power to say anything different, because if you spoke it, you could be a dead Black person. Yes. That doesn't do you much good, or your family would suffer the consequences. And I think that's what happens when we talk about white women in particular, saying, I mean, they say it, but even their own kind, I mean, some of our own, she's just being that way. She just doesn't know. So we diminish it. Our power is different when we're in a one down situation. How do we use it? How do we get it? And how do we kind of manipulate it when we have to? But it really shows up all the time. And I was thinking, when Lindsay was talking about the March on Washington, there were lots of white folks arm in arm with us. And that's how some of the legislation happened. Unfortunately, they said, we've done this one thing, and Black people do it too. So are we done yet?
Yeah.
We've got this.
Right.
So how do we realize it's a sustainable thing that we have to continually be vigilant about to make the real progress we want to see? So it's purposeful. We must be purposeful. Elaine, or Dr. Yarborough. What's the big finish? I've been calling you Elaine a while, but I can do better. I call my husband Reverend in front of people, but I call him, so I get it. I mean, with all due respect, I'm using that respectfully.
Yeah.
No, I know.
I saw this great cartoon that was it was a mountain, which resonates being from Colorado. Like it was the slope of a mountain, and on a little plateau is a Black man in a backpack and a white man in a backpack, and like the man is doubled over, breathing like heavily, and it said like, I'll find it and put it in the comments, but it was like awareness of inequity, and that was where the plateau was. And then it was like a really steep incline, and it was like the work we still have left to do. And the Black man was like, let's do this. And it's like, he was like, I know it's hard, but this is just the beginning. And I thought that summed it up nicely, especially it gave me a reframe, because we've been, as a family, as a business, talking about dynamics of inequity since I was little, forever. Talking about race and gender, talking about LGBTQ rights, talking about post-dad stroke, awareness of ableism and what kind of dynamics happen around biases around physical ability. And
I'm going to interject and say you are people of the world because you are so welcoming to people from other countries and welcome and willing to go and sleep on the rug or the whatever. I mean, it's something that I long for. I'm not going to try real hard on the sleeping on the rug, but I'm just saying that you really enmesh yourselves as not just as a company, but as individuals into understanding other cultures. I just got to give you an attaboy, attagirl on that one.
Oh, well, thank you.
And
that means something. That means something.
And that's why I liked that cartoon, because it reminded me that for some people, this last week has been their first time putting on that backpack and climbing up that first hill, and trying to not look at them entirely and go, really? Like, this has been going on for, but to pause and say, welcome. Yes, it is going to be hard, and yes, there is more to go. And when we're talking about race, we're not talking about just black and white. We're also talking about how when there's a terror attack, everyone I know who's a little bit brown crosses their fingers and is like, please let it not be a brown person, like, because they know that'll lead.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
because it'll be generalized.
Yeah,
when all the gun shooting has been white men, but it's not generalized,
right?
It's that was one individual doing that, but then as you learn, and a lot of people will be talking to know this, but as people are starting to learn, just notice what is generalized and what's not. If a black woman fails at leadership, it's generalized.
Oh Lord.
A white
That's
man,
why we can't have women, because she failed. One woman,
and one white man fails. It's just him. It's just an individual. So
let's find him a spot where he can succeed.
Right. Yes. Let's promote him so he could succeed. He'd have more power.
Yeah, or let's make sure he can go to college after sexually assaulting people, because we don't want to take away his future. And it's like, and how quickly, or reframe to, well, they were struggling with depression. And it's like, depression is real. A lot of depressed people don't take up firearms. So no, go ahead.
I'm thinking so fast about all this.
Me too.
So we know from experience, like Cherie, you were talking about enmeshing ourselves, the benefits of that. I mean, it's so exciting, so learning. The solutions that come out are so ingenious, and so I want everybody, whatever stage they are at their learning, it's okay to ask the question, what's in it for me? And we've talked for years about the business case of this or that. Well, we know that diverse functional teams, better solutions. We know that diverse companies who really work on inclusion, better bottom lines. I mean, all the data is there, except if we're personally not there, it doesn't make any difference. But I want us to say it's okay. If we're envisioning the future, what's in it for me? Yeah. It could be excitement. It could be less violence. It could be less drugs. It could be your whole world is expanded in terms of what's possible. So, I just want to remind us.
I love that.
And what that ties back for me is that whole sense of what's in it for all of us with higher levels of equity is more talent.
Yes.
Because when you have marginalized populations of any kind, and this ties into what, Mom, you say all the time, like, and I fully have integrated that into almost all of the work that I do is about, like, there's so much talent that gets trapped. Like, how do we get it out? And so how do we tap into the talent of people? And it's by making sure people have resources to do the things they want and access to education that they want. And it's about the more equity we have, the more talent we have, because people are supported. And back to what we were saying, like, when you're scared or then you can't be
Well, I often talk, especially in industries that aren't high tech or something. I often talk to, especially men, because that's usually who's in there. I talk about they didn't want to bring in people from other countries, or originally, doesn't even matter how many generations ago. When you talk about you have the opportunity to learn more, think about when we went to different restaurants, our palates grew, we learned a lot. You have some guy that comes off of a line, I can't think what you call them, an assembly line, but he comes from another country. When they have much less space, do you know how folks get to be more effective in a small space? Well, guess what? You could learn from him. You could maximize your operation. It's not that you're going to catch whatever he is. You're not going to turn whatever he or she is. It's okay if they accidentally bump. I mean, I get that simplistic with it because people won't verbalize it, but it's the truth. But we have an opportunity to be enriched by being around others. And I mean, it's a value proposition intrinsically, emotionally, and where the money comes.
That's right. Yeah, follow the money. Well, Mike and I, my husband, we just rewatched Hidden Figures, which is one of my favorite movies, and I'm going, don't you get it? The woman who sent the guy to the moon, if she hadn't been courageous, it's like she sent him to the moon. And so, as Lindsay knows, I just get crazy about this. It's like if John Glenn and other people hadn't said, "I want you on my team,"
I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
And what that meant that we went to the moon.
Yes.
You know, like
we went to the moon.
I mean, I know that I just want to say that because as someone who didn't live through the moon landing, like but that feeling of like we as humans went to the moon because of the work of these women and that whole team at NASA. Like we accomplished so much more than we could have, and just that gives me goosebumps.
Like me too. Well,
and I celebrate that.
Yeah.
But look how long it took to figure out that we included a little black girl from somewhere.
Right.
I mean,
keep that part secret.
She was brilliant. I mean, tiny. I mean, when I watch this movie, Cherie, I just start cheering. Oh my God! Because I know, math is like another world. And I just love people's courage who hang in there. I mean, and I include myself in that. It's
absolutely.
By God, we got stuff to say, and so yeah.
And the other reality is that it's tiring and tedious. Have there not been times that you said, if I have to go another further, I'm going to drop?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And, half the time I didn't even know what was happening, but I just knew I wasn't getting tenure, So you don't even know the background, who's operating the background. Right. And that's a systemic piece. Yeah. Right. Oh my God.
Well, and that is, I feel like we've hit on so many pieces. I'm aware of our time a little bit, and I was thinking if we have more to say, we might pause this one and then start as a second one, so that way people can watch that. I feel like we've got a few more things to say. Is that
I'm excited.
All right, cool.
Well, I want one thing I think you're right about the time, and it would be lovely to continue this to also, teach and make aware. But I'd like to close this by, I mean, here we are. We're the real people right here, and so how is it that we all came to love and trust each other? And this is part of, if you've already gone part of this journey, then I'm thinking from a white perspective now that we need feedback. And also we just need to talk with each other about what works.
Yeah.
I think
is that are so valuable. So is that okay to talk about that?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Great.
So what do we think, y'all? How did we come to love each other?
I remember when I met Elaine Yarborough, I'd heard wonderful, wonderful things about her. I was an internal at Hewlett Packard Company, and I'd heard she walked on water and everything. She walked in the door, and I saw this little tiny thing, and she was speaking Southern. Notice I didn't say with a Southern accent. In my family, we go, she was speaking Southern. And I thought, this is going to be a special moment. She's going to tell me how fortunate I am and that I don't act black, but you see, you're here at HP. I mean, I'm going to tell you, all my stuff came up because I've got stuff.
Yeah.
And this woman, it's not because you're here. This woman was aware, and she didn't walk right in preaching to me either, although you could get away with it because you're damn good. But you walked in acknowledging the personhood. Excuse me. Of everyone in that room, acknowledging them as an individual of worth and purpose, not one higher than the other. You had me after that. It's all over.
I had never heard that story. I had not heard that story.
That doesn't happen because I walk in with a healthy skepticism about somebody white coming to tell me how it is to be Black in a corporation. And I know the corporation has hired them to tell me that.
Yeah.
And that I should be happy. I know that's not what they say, but you got me with the valuing and taking the time to know who was in the room.
Oh.
I should have told you that a long time ago.
Well, this is
But I love you.
This is my birthday too. That's the best birthday gift you could have given me. Thank you. Thank you.
And you're Elaine's girl, so I gotta love you. Sweet thing when I first met you. You're bright, competent, independent woman. That's what brings the willingness to hear your voice and to learn from you.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because you were her child, but I gave you a break because you had perceived confidence, you had perceived credibility, but you did the same thing. You modeled it in a whole different way as a youngster. I mean, you're a grown woman, and I don't think of you as a youngster at all. I think you're a very effective young woman, but you have the ability to model some of those exact same things, and it still gets my heart.
Well, that gives me goosebumps. I remember meeting you when I was
about me to you. I mean, there are stages of development.
Yeah.
I met you. I mean, of course, I liked you and then quickly loved you. But you're willing also to own your Blackness. Know you have filters as well. Notice when they come up. Whoop! This little short white Texan woman. I don't know. And then no, she's got something. And so we all have stereotypes. I mean, you can't not because of our experience and plus the culture. But that willingness to be present and notice and then let go. And I think that permeable boundary, that's probably too fancy a word, but that willingness to know my stereotype and be grounded enough to own it, and then let new information come in. But you get to have both of them and then build relationships. So
you got taller by the minute.
Yeah.
And I didn't notice the Southern talking.
Yeah.
I mean, I noticed the fullness of who you are, and it was so.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop again. Sorry.
And that's what happens, because I noticed in the protest. I mean, I think in some very deep way, people yearn for that connection, even though they can't explain it. And in the protest, when you saw, a crossing of the police line and the other person, there's this melting when kindness happens. And I know that it's not always possible given how we set things up, but I just think people are yearning for connection and kindness. So to allow ourselves to do that, oh my God, the world is so much richer. How about you, youngster?
Well, I remember meeting Cherie when, at the house. Y'all must have been doing work with HP. I don't know. I was 10 or 11, I think. I was little. And, from the second you walked in, you were family. So, I don't remember a pre-Cherie or post. It was just oh, yeah, Cherie.
You give great hugs, too.
Thanks. And then in 2017, we finally got to work together, and I was fangirling out about I get to work with Cherie, and then we got on our first Zoom call, and I was I had my plan, but I was open, and I'm yes, let us plan, and you were that sounds great, I'll do it, whatever you say, I'll do, and I was what? I was and you're I love all the things you brought to the table, I'm a big fan, and I was no, I'm a fan. And I was like, I feel like we mutually fangirled each other in a way that made me like feel so loved and connected.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't get it for a little bit, in part because I forget, and because of the work that we do and working so much internationally, like I forget how many people don't accept and don't talk about things as clearly.
Mhm.
And this has been kind of back to the comic, like I've been blind to the lack of work that people have
Mhm.
not been doing, right? I kind of thought everybody was doing the work, because when I walk in the room to talk about race and conflict and gender and inequity, those are the people I'm talking to. So it's like, great, we're all talking about this, and it's like, we're not all talking about this, and there are so many hurdles that
Mhm.
that any marginalized group runs into over and over, and I know that, and I experience it in different ways, but I forget that we're not all in it together in the same way. And so it makes me super proud to have been in on it without even really knowing how in on it been. If that, I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but
You're doing great.
It was just
As
nice.
well as those in the majority have their work. The same thing you're saying about, we don't know their backgrounds. We assume just because they have a white face, everything's been rosy. No,
Yeah.
that's not the case, right?
Yeah.
So.
And to know each other's stories, it just, we all know from our work, that's what opens things up. It's person to person. Here's my story. Believe it, learn it. Yeah. Well, this is marvelous. So should we close this and then hope for another?
Sure. Sounds good. Well, so this has been our first guest appearance. Thank you, Cherie.
Thank you very much. So glad to be here. Thank you. I'm
Thank-
blessed.
Thanks, Mom, for being up for this journey as well.
On your birthday, on your birthday.
And we'll see y'all soon. All right.
All right.
See
Thank
ya.
you. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.